You've met that person, the one who seems to enjoy putting others down, who finds a way to make even a compliment sound like an insult, who leaves a small trail of quietly wounded people wherever they go. You've probably assumed they're simply cruel by nature, wired differently, missing some basic decency the rest of us have. But the real answer is far stranger, because meanness usually isn't about strength at all. It's almost always a signal of something breaking down underneath the surface. Here's a finding worth sitting with first. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent years studying aggression and self-esteem, and his research consistently found something that contradicts what most people assume. Genuinely mean, hostile behavior isn't typically linked to high self-esteem at all. It's far more strongly connected to a fragile, unstable sense of self, one that feels threatened by almost anything, and lashes out defensively in response. Think about what that means. The person cutting someone else down usually isn't operating from a position of real confidence. They're operating from a position of perceived threat, even when that threat exists only in their own mind. Psychologist Brad Bushman took this further, studying the specific connection between narcissistic traits and aggressive behavior. His research found that people scoring higher on narcissism measures responded with significantly more hostility when their ego was directly challenged, even through something as small as mild criticism or a minor social slight. Crucially, this aggression wasn't random or evenly distributed. It surged specifically in moments when their self-image felt threatened. Meanness, in other words, often functions as a defense mechanism, not a personality trait operating independently of context. Here's the twist that reframes the entire pattern. A truly secure person, someone whose sense of self-worth doesn't wobble easily, generally has very little reason to tear someone else down. Confidence doesn't need to prove itself by making someone else feel small. Meanness tends to show up specifically where insecurity is already present, functioning almost like smoke rising from a fire you can't directly see. Think about the specific situations where meanness tends to spike most predictably. Someone feels publicly embarrassed and immediately redirects that humiliation onto whoever's nearby. Someone feels quietly threatened by another person's success and responds with subtle undermining instead of acknowledgement. Someone's own unresolved insecurity about their appearance, intelligence, or worth gets projected outward as criticism of someone else's. In each case, the target of the meanness usually isn't really the cause of it. They're simply standing in the blast radius of someone else's internal instability. This connects to something researchers call displaced aggression, the tendency to redirect frustration or hurt toward a target that had little or nothing to do with causing it in the first place. A person who felt criticized by their boss earlier in the day might come home and snap unfairly at a family member over something minor. The aggression is real. The target is often almost arbitrary, simply whoever happened to be nearby when the pressure needed somewhere to go. Here's where this becomes genuinely useful information rather than just an uncomfortable psychological fact. Understanding this doesn't mean mean behavior should be excused or tolerated. It absolutely shouldn't, but it does change how you interpret it. When someone is unnecessarily cruel to you, the instinctive reaction is usually to internalize it, to wonder what's wrong with you that provoked that response. Far more often, the accurate explanation has almost nothing to do with you at all. You simply happen to be standing nearby when someone else's unresolved insecurity needed an outlet. This is where the modern mirror becomes especially sharp. Online spaces have essentially industrialized this exact psychological pattern. Anonymous comment sections and social media platforms create conditions where insecure, threatened impulses can be acted on instantly, with almost no social cost or accountability attached. The volume of casual cruelty you encounter online isn't necessarily evidence that people have become crueler overall. It may simply be evidence that the barriers that once slowed down that impulse, face-to-face consequences, social reputation, immediate feedback, have been almost entirely removed. Here's something worth remembering about your own moments of meanness too, because everyone has them. The next time you catch yourself snapping unfairly at someone, or feeling a flash of satisfaction from putting someone else down, pause and ask what's actually happening underneath it. Are you responding to something they genuinely did, or are you redirecting pressure, insecurity, or hurt that has nothing to do with them at all? So the next time you encounter someone being unnecessarily cruel, notice what's actually happening beneath the surface. You're rarely witnessing strength. You're almost always witnessing insecurity, wearing strength as a temporary, unconvincing disguise. You've met that person, the one who seems to enjoy putting others down, leaving a trail of quietly wounded people behind them. Now you know that behavior was never really a sign of power at all. It was a quiet confession that something underneath was already breaking long before you ever walked into the room.